To open public business, just to remind people to switch your mobile phones off, please, as it will interfere with recording. Moving into what is item 5 on your pack, which is Human Transplantation Bill, the committee deliberations. Just want at this point then members to seek agreement to instruct the Bills Office to draft the amendments as discussed. Agreed to do that, and also just to remind members then that on this the questions will be put formally on the clauses at next week's meeting, which is the 27th of January, and discussions will only take place on draft amendments at that point. Okay, Joanne?
Chair, declare an interest again as a proposer of the bill, and you know, Chair raised this last week. It'd be very important to have the department's view and amendments. I raised this with you last week because I feel they would help inform the discussions. The Minister said he was giving this issue his fullest consideration, and I think that was back before Christmas. So, Chair, could we write to him yet again, because of the time scale, and we're now a week away from the clause-by-clause deliberations.
Okay, we have instructed or requested, and we haven't received anything to date. I'm happy to raise it again with the department, but we're still awaiting those.
Thanks, Chair.
And obviously they're critical in terms of moving the process on.
Yeah.
Okay, members, the next item is Chair's business. Just a number of items. Just to advise members that I met with Professor Rafael Bengoa, the chair of the expert panel that has been established by the Minister to look obviously at the reform and reconfiguration of the health and social care services. Just a number of issues. I suppose it was a very useful exchange. Issues were raised in terms of health inequalities, and certainly the sense coming from the appointed chair is that health inequalities and an outcome framework will be central to the delivery of health and social care going forward, with a focus on earlier intervention and prevention. I think there was a general acceptance that the system is complex and overly bureaucratic, and that there's a need also, and I think it was an important conversation because it's certainly one that I as chair and indeed the committee I think share, that there has been I suppose a lack of joined up approach between policy direction and budget allocation, and certainly that was something that the chair, Professor Bengoa, identified himself in relation to that being of concern and having to be addressed. And that was one of the issues, if members remember, in our evidence around budget scrutiny. We're hearing evidence back that the separation between policy and allocation of fund was actually quite disturbing. So it was extremely useful to hear the appointed chair taking that on and actually recognising that as well. So the next steps in terms of this process, Professor Bengoa has indicated the political summit is scheduled, will be convened on Wednesday the 17th of February. That would be to consider what the principles are that would underpin the reconfiguration of health and social care. Clearly it's an important engagement, an important part of getting political consensus. I suppose I was very keen to point out to the chair that political consensus was actually achieved a number of years ago. In my view, it wasn't utilised, or if you like, the meat wasn't put in the bones in relation to the process. So I'm bringing this to members' attention. They should note that they obviously will be invited as political representatives to the summit rather than health committee members. But I'm suggesting members that we don't hold a committee meeting that day, that in order to maximise attendance at the summit. So are members, excuse me, in agreement to do that? Yeah. Okay, just
what's that again?
It's the 17th of February. It's a Wednesday.
And will that be here, Chair? Yeah.
It's. I think it's a start, but the venue will be sent out and confirmation will be sent out. Members, just one other item I had under Chair's business, and that was in relation to the infertility issue. And I'm looking to Pam Cameron in relation to this as well, and Rosa McCorley, who are also members of the all-party group. And yourself, Joanne, sorry, apologies. The department had been asked to attend the meeting, previous meeting of the all-party group, and weren't available. The next meeting is on the 9th of March, and I'm seeking agreement, members, that we would write, there's plenty of time there, write to the Minister to ensure that departmental representatives would be at that meeting. We also had previously, as a committee, raised the issue of an update on the one full cycle of IVF treatment. And I'm just seeking agreement, members, that we would go back to the Minister and the Department as to progress on that. That, if we remind ourselves, had been costed. And I suppose we had taken a very, I think, pragmatic approach to this issue in relation to moving even to one full cycle. So seeking agreement that we go back to the Minister. Members in agreement with that? Thank you. Okay, members, then. That was Chair's business. Okay, the draft minutes of the meeting on Wednesday the 13th of January, which are at page 91 of your meeting pack. Just asking, are members content with the minutes? Yeah.
Great.
Okay, then next item is the miscellaneous provisions bill, and we move to committee deliberations. We're now commencing final deliberations on the health miscellaneous provisions bill, and the purpose being to consider the department's proposed amendments and whether we need any further information before we would do our formal clause by clause reading next week. And I would emphasise that we're not taking any formal decisions today, but we will need to take them next week. So just that people are clear on that. Relevant papers are pages 98 to 142 of your meeting pack. Correspondence from the Minister advising that he's now written to the Executive for approval to table the amendments. We will be discussing today, and that's at page 6 of your tabled pack. Asking firstly, does any member want to declare an interest? Okay. Moving then to clause 1, which deals with the prohibition of sale of nicotine products to persons under 18. Just to remind members that the department was asked to consider whether it would be prepared to make an amendment to clause 1, which was about amending the Tobacco Retailers Act to include those selling e-cigarettes. Informing members that the department has responded positively and has provided the text of a proposed amendment that will insert a new clause after clause 2, which provides that the department may, by regulations, amend the provisions of the Tobacco Retailers Act relating to the register of tobacco retailers to apply them in relation to nicotine product retailers. And that text of that amendment is at page 5 of your table pack. I think that's a positive response from the department. Can I seek members' views on that proposed amendment? Taken that members are in agreement with that proposed amendment. Okay. Do members have any other issues that they wish to raise, or are they content to move on to the next clause?
We're dealing solely with the ministers,
Yes.
the ministers'
Yes,
amendment,
yes.
and any other amendments conflict with that. What?
We're doing a clause by clause basis, so as they're appropriate. Okay. Okay, so members content to move to the next clause. There was no issues with clause 2. So are members content to discuss the department's next proposed amendment, which clause 3, which is amendments consequential on sections 1 and 2. Again, just to inform members that the department has provided the text of an amendment consequential to the proposed amendment to insert new clause 2A, and the text of that can be found at page 5 of your tabled pack. Just seeking members' views at this point on the department's proposed amendment. Okay, are members comfortable? Okay. So do members have any other issues they want to raise, or content to move on to the next clause? Okay, so just to remind members that the committee had no issues with clauses 4 and 5. So are members content to move on to discuss the department's next proposed amendment?
Great.
So we're dealing with the new part 2, smoking in a private vehicle. Just to remind members that the department provided the text of a proposed amendment in relation to the banning of smoking in private cars carrying minors. The text of that can be found at pages 116 of your meeting pack. Again, at last week's meeting, the committee agreed to write to the department for clarity on the role of councils in relation to enforcement, particularly, and their capacity to enforce, and views on whether the PSNI would be more of an appropriate enforcement authority. The response from the department is at page 3 of your tabled pack, and the department has advised that the definition of an enforcement authority will be provided through regulations, Enforcement of existing tobacco control legislation is carried out by authorised officers of district councils. However, given that district council staff don't have stop and search powers that the PSNI have, issues have arisen about the obtaining, for example, of driver information to issue fixed penalty notices. So the department is considering a dual enforcement approach, similar to that adopted in England and Wales. In practice, this would mean that fixed penalty notices could be issued by either the PSNI or district councils. So the department is currently in discussions with Justice to examine the potential for such an approach and will consult before making any final regulations. Does that clarify?
Yep.
Okay, any other issues in relation to that, or content to move on? So there were no issues with clauses 6 to 16, so we're content to move on. Just to remind members that the committee had no issues on the two schedules of the bill, so again, our members content to move on.
Yep.
The long title, just to remind members that the Minister had proposed an amendment to the long title to insert after tobacco to regulate smoking in a private vehicle. Again, straightforward. The text of that is in 117 of your meeting pack. Just to inform members that this amendment rather, is consequential to amendment to insert new part 2. Just remind members there was no issues that were raised last week in relation to that proposed amendment. Are there any further issues that members want to raise? So I'm asking members if they're content to conclude the final deliberations on the Health Miscellaneous Provisions Bill.
Good.
Okay, just then to remind members, the questions will be put formally on the clauses at next week's meeting on the 27th of January. Moving on, the Health and Social Services Amendment Bill. We are now commencing deliberations on the Amendment Bill, and the relevant papers are at pages 144 to 176 of your meeting pack. Again, just to remind members that during last week's deliberations, it was agreed to seek a ministerial assurance in relation to clause 2, and whether the power contained in this clause to disclose information about a person's fitness to practice are in line with a person's data protection rights under other pieces of legislation. And the response from the Minister has been tabled at page 8 of your tabled pack. So do members have any comments that they wish to make? Do they have any other additional issues in relation to this issue that they want to raise? Okay, are members then content to conclude the informal deliberations on the Health and Personal Social Care Amendment Bill? And again, just remind members that questions will be put formally on the clauses at next week's meeting on the 27th of January. Next item, members, is the Animals and Animal Products and SL1 examination for residues and maximum residue limits regulations, which is pages 178 to 182. This statutory rule is proposed jointly by the Department of Agriculture and Food Standards Agency. It will consolidate the Animals and Animal Products examination for residues and maximum residue limits regulations 1998 as amended into one piece of legislation, as there are a number of amendments associated with the regulations. This will produce a more accessible, transparent and user-friendly version of the legislation. There will be no changes to policy or existing requirements. To inform members that the Board for Agriculture and Rural Development considered the proposal for the statutory rule at their meeting on the 19th of January 2016 and agreed that it was content for DARD to jointly make the rule. So the rule will be subject to negative resolution procedure. Are members content in the department prepares the statutory rule?
Good.
Next item is the Forward Work Programme, which is page 183, just asking members to note. Item 12, matters arising. There are no matters arising. And item 13 is correspondence. There are 2 items of correspondence at pages 186 to 189 of your meeting pack. Are members content to note the correspondence?
Good.
Any other business? Okay, date, time and place of next meeting is Wednesday, the 27th of January, starting at 2 p.m. in the Senate chamber.
Committee room 29.